Welcome back to PC-88 Paradise, the series where we take a close look at classic games for the NEC PC-88, the most popular Japanese PC series of the 1980s. Oh man, I can't believe I haven't done Popful Mail yet. This really feels like a video I should have made 4 years ago. I wonder if any of my regular viewers are experiencing the Mandela effect now, thinking that I definitely did this one way back then. And if you are from the other timeline, could you please let me know how the old video turned out? And if you're wondering why I waited until now, it's just because I've played and finished almost every version of this game already. In particular, finishing the PC-98 version, which is very similar to the PC-88 version, still feels very fresh in my memory, even though that was like 2006? I guess it wasn't that recent. Anyway, I just didn't feel like playing through Popful Mail again, though technically I've never played all the way through the original version for PC-88. So what the hell, let's do it. Today you're finally watching Popful Mail on PC-88 Paradise. The way I first heard of Popful Mail is probably the same way many of you did. Working Designs released the Sega CD version in North America in 1995. And being such a late release on the system, I don't think it was very long before my brothers and I found the game on clearance at Electronics Boutique for $19.99. Considering how much the game goes for now, I'd say we got a pretty good deal. We knew very little about the game before buying, but had enjoyed a few of the other titles Working Designs had brought over from Japan and thought, why not? We absolutely loved Popful Mail on the Sega CD. I'm not even exaggerating when I say that I personally thought it was the best game I had ever played at the time, even though I mostly just watched my brother Neo Alec play through it. He was kind of the Sega guy at our house at the time. A year or two later, we got the Super Famicom version, and then the PC Engine version, both of which I finished. And when I got into PC-98 in the 2000s, I played through that version as well. I got my PC-88 in the 2010s, and immediately picked up Popful Mail since it was a common title. I only popped it in to try it a few times though. Each one is interesting in its own way, but I'm just gonna say it right out of the gate. The Sega CD version will always be the best. It's pretty much no contest. But the 1991 PC-88 version is still interesting for being the original. Let's take a look. While the game has always been written Popful Mail in English, in Japanese it's Popful Mail, which normally you would expect to be Popful Mail in English. Guess they didn't want people to think it was somehow related to Popples.
Pop your football, Popful. Who's got the ball? I've got a Popful.
But seriously, that was a joke. I don't think Popples were ever even sold officially in Japan. They probably just thought the name sounded cute. On the back, you can see the other main characters, who are noticeably absent from the cover of the PC-88 version. Inside, there's an absolutely gorgeous color manual. Though uncredited, the characters were originally designed by Kunihiko Tanaka, who also created the characters for Legend of Heroes 1 and Dinosaur. He quit before Popful Mail was completed though. At least some of these illustrations here were drawn by Hiroyuki Nishimura, who did the Ys anime series. There's a survey and registration card. And here's a beautiful unused user disc sticker. The game is stored on 6 floppy disks consisting of the program disc, opening disc, visual disc, and data discs 1 through 3. First, let's watch the opening by booting the opening disc. This was from the days when every Falcom opening started with a boring text roll before getting to the good part. Nobody ever pays attention to the prologue in Popful Mail. But the gist of it is that long ago there was a demon god who was defeated and sealed away by an elf, a human, and a dwarf. At the end of this text wall we get the closest thing Popful Mail has to a title screen. I love the design of this screen in the PC-88 version. It just takes me back to the RPGs of the 80s, especially games from Falcom's Dragon Slayer series like Romancia and Legacy of the Wizard, while also being even more cute and colorful than those games ever were. And that's going to be a running theme throughout Popful Mail, or it's the way I see the game anyway. It was a very late release on the PC-88, and was in many ways a game looking back on those older classics. But now let's get to the fun part of the opening. We are shown our main character, a bounty hunter elf named Mail. I don't know why she's named Mail. I guess she is wearing armor on her upper body.
Uh-oh, it's the female man.
Female carrier bark.
By the way, while in the English Sega CD version she often says that Popful Mail is her full name, she never calls herself that in the Japanese versions. Her name is just Mail. Mail is chasing after a wanted criminal named Nuts Cracker, who sends his exploding marionettes after her, and if that wasn't enough, he runs away leaving behind his head, which also explodes. Having only Nuts Cracker's busted head to show for her work, Mail is feeling down and thinks she may not be cut out for the bounty hunting business after all. But just then, she comes upon a fort with a bounty hunters guild. There is comedically revealed that piles of Nuts Cracker's heads have already been brought in, and they're worthless. But here Mail learns of another bounty of $2 million for an evil wizard. In the English Sega CD version they call him Muttonhead, but in Japanese he is Material, or Material in some of the other versions. Yeah, I can kind of see why they decided to change that name. Mail cheers up and is determined to take him down and claim the bounty. Now we're instructed to insert the user disk and data disk 1 to start the game, but first I need to make that user disk, so I'm going to just reset the system with the opening disk still inserted and hold the help key to get into the utility menu. Here we select Backup Program Disk to create what the game also refers to as the user disk. As instructed, I'll insert the program disk in drive 1 and a blank disk in drive 2 before pressing return. Once that's all done, you can of course put that user disk sticker on the disk if you want. Next, I'll select Start the Adventure from the beginning, where I'm instructed to insert the user disk in drive 1 and data disk 1 in drive 2 before pressing return. By the way, when you start the game next time, you can just boot with these two disks inserted. You'll get this copyright screen and music until you press something. This is the only time this great tune is ever used in the PC-88 version. At the beginning of the game, we're taken to the first overhead map, which is the jungle. The music in Popful Mail, by the way, has such a fun, happy sound, while also sounding a lot like previous Falcom games. The sound is simply magical. After all these years, this was Falcom's first game to use the PC-88's stereo soundboard too. Well, besides Sorcerian for PC-88 VA, but that was sort of an anomaly. Why Falcom didn't use the soundboard 2 before Popful Mail is anybody's guess, but I've always had a theory. Popful Mail for PC-98 was released after stereo FM soundboards had finally become available for the PC-98 as well, and so they could use the exact same stereo FM arrangements for both the PC-88 and PC-98 versions. Whereas before that, I guess they didn't want to bother making stereo arrangements if they would only be able to use them in the PC-88 version. But enough already. I'm sure many of you are dying for me to just shut up and go to the first stage. In Popful Mail, you can jump and attack using the trigger buttons on the gamepad. So if you thought this looks like a game where you press up to jump, you can go sit in the corner for a while. This is Popful fricking Mail here. This is practically a modern game compared to that old crap. What? It's from the end of 1991. It's practically brand new. To open the menu with the gamepad, you have to press down plus attack. This causes me to sometimes open the menu when I'm trying to shoot downward, but just let go of the down button to continue facing downward. You won't be using the attack button at all though yet, since Mail starts out with only a bump attack. It feels a bit weird using bump attacks in a side-scroller, but don't worry, you don't really have to use the bump attacks for most of the game if you don't want to. On this second screen, we meet an elf stuck in a tree. This is a character who will be causing nothing but trouble for Mail throughout the game. They call him Slick in the English Sega CD version, but in the original Japanese versions, his name is Blackie. Yeah, I can see why they didn't want to deal with that name in the English version. But that's his name, and it just wouldn't feel right to call him Slick here on PC-88 Paradise.
Can we call you Uncle Blackie?
No.
Mail has no desire to help him whatsoever, cause that's just her character. She only cares about bounty and treasure, but when she finds the elf village nearby, she does inform the guards of the situation so they can go help. Here in the first town, we'll find shops selling fruit to be used as healing items, as well as a wood shield and dagger. Since Popful Mail doesn't have experience, you improve your characters by buying equipment. Love the simple inventory screen, by the way. It's almost like the ones in the East games. With the dagger equipped, you no longer have to use bump attacks, though it is true that bump attacks do more damage. We'll do lots of platforming in the trees and mountains in this stage before the end when we meet Tato, a human wizard searching for his mentor. And it turns out that mentor just happens to be the very wizard that Mail is searching for, Material. Anyway, Tato says his fire magic won't work on the boss ahead, so Mail has to fight it. The bosses are a pretty major part of this game, and the first one has a rather fun and easy pattern to learn. Gotta love that sound when the bosses go down. It sounds like we just defeated the Dark Lord. That, coupled with the sound of the HP refilling and a door opening, reassures us that we're playing a Falcom game. Tato thanks Mail for defeating the boss and heads on to the tree tower, where he believes he'll find Material. That's the next stage of the game. Man, the layouts of these jungle stages with the little elevators and villages in them are just fun. It's like a giant treehouse. In this one, we have to fight the same boss again, except there are two of them.
There's two of them.
So after the first two jungle stages, the last stage is just a boss. The wood golem is another fun one where you can learn the pattern and enjoy chasing his head around when it pops off to do actual damage. After defeating it, Mail meets Material for the first time, who was the creator of the golem. Before Mail can capture him though, he disappears in a puff of smoke. She finds Tato in a jail cell below, and this time he joins the party. Between each map of the game is a short cutscene. In this one, Mail and Tato head to the ancient cave, where Tato believes Material has gone. On the new map screen, we're immediately asked to choose between the two characters, but we can change at any time. Though each of them has their own HP meter, it's game over if any of your characters should die. Tato has projectile attacks. In the cave, we immediately find Material. The dialogue for these story parts differs, by the way, depending on which character you're playing. I remember my brother trying to beat all the bosses in the Sega CD version with each character, just so he could hear all the hilarious dialogue Working Designs had recorded. That definitely wasn't easy. Here, a booming voice roars out and gets angry at Material for failing to stop our heroes earlier with the wood golem. He disappears in a lightning bolt. Okay, that was weird. In the cave area, the stage layouts quickly become a lot more complex than in the jungle. This first one even has two separate exits to the map screen. We'll meet Blackie again, who is searching for treasure and manages to get himself trapped using his bombs, also blocking one of the two exits in the process. We don't have any choice now but to help him. At the other exit, which is locked, we meet this monster who uses his high jump to get over a wall and run away. Blackie then suggests using a bomb to create a step to get over that wall. He tells us we can get some in the jungle where his village is. Luckily, this game has sort of a stage select feature, which you can use to access any previous stage from the map screen. Up until now, this game has been holding my hand pretty tightly the whole way, but here's where it gets a little ambiguous. Someone back at his village tells us that the last of the bombs has been stolen by monsters, so who knows where to go. But the answer is that you have to go back to the boss room in the same stage, where you'll find a chest with the bomb in it. So then we can use the bomb to get past this wall and get a pickaxe, which we can then use to save Blackie and open up the rest of the stage behind him. This eventually leads to another stage, which is actually a dead end. But while here we can save some monsters, earn their trust, and get the key to the locked exit back in the previous stage. Or actually, I should say that we get 2 random unmarked keys. It's funny how in the story, the characters will say the keys are for certain doors, but in actuality the game just has a number for how many keys you have. That's so old school. The game only ever gives you as many keys as you need to progress, though. From the locked exit back in the first cave stage, we can get to the third, where we meet Material again. He's being held here by the monsters because he told them he was planning to awaken a huge creature that dwells in the caves that even the monsters are afraid of. But it turns out that Blackie beat him to it. He accidentally woke the creature up while bombing for treasure again. And now, of course, he and the monsters say it's our hero's responsibility to defeat it. This game is really like a parody of older RPGs. It takes tropes like fearsome monsters sleeping in caves and has them awakened due to pure stupidity. And we have our self-centered anti-hero, Mail, who never really wants to save the day, paired with the soft-spoken Tato. Even having a female elf as the fighter and a male human as the wizard kind of flies in the face of previous tropes when you think about it. And you guys probably thought Popful Mail was just some old retro RPG for antiquated machines. I'm telling you, it's from late 1991, it's brand new. This is the action RPG to end all action RPGs, just like how Last Action Hero was the last action movie. So here's the boss of the caves. This one is still pretty fun and reasonable if you learn the pattern, but that will change with some of the bosses coming up. For the bosses in this game, you can always choose if you want to just brute force it using a bunch of healing items. The fruit is not very expensive and easy to buy back in stage 1-1, but you might want to be careful about using up your elixirs since there are a limited number of those to be had in the game. After the boss, the monster, Gao, rewards the party by joining them. Actually, in the English Sega CD version, it's pronounced Ga, and I can see why because the English spelling of his name, even in the Japanese versions, sure looks like Ga, but in Japanese it's pronounced Gao, so sorry, I think I'm gonna go with that. Please cover your ears if that bothers you. Gao, 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 Gao. Mail finally gets to capture Material, but when she brings him back to the fort to receive her bounty, they find it destroyed. Material says it's the work of the long sealed away demon god mentioned in the game's opening, which he has been working to revive. Tato says they should seek out the dwarves who made the seal in the first place. They can be found at the mine nearby. So Mail says fine, she'll go. She'll take her bounty from the god's treasure instead. He's bound to have some, right? I'd say her motivation is getting a little weak at this point. They leave Material there in a cage so that he won't run away. So next is the Volcanic Zone. Here the map and stage BGMs were reversed in the Sega CD version, and only the Sega CD version. So if you've only played the Sega CD version and were not aware of this little trivia, then you've been living a lie. And while you might suspect that this was due to meddling by Working Designs, actually it was that way in the Japanese Mega CD version as well. The map screen music is especially good here in the Volcanic Zone, so I can definitely understand the logic for the change. I don't know where to put a spoiler warning in this video, but let's just put one here for people who are still hoping to play the Sega CD version someday for the very first time. So to sum up the Volcanic Zone, there we meet a young dwarf named Jakob, who was renamed to Glug in the North American Sega CD version. This character, for some reason, becomes best friends with Blackie for the rest of the game. And deeper in, we also meet an elder dwarf who was one of the heroes mentioned in the opening. He's the one who made the seal to hold the demon god, and tells us he did it using 4 crystals, which can be found on the frozen island in the distance. So the next map is the iceberg. It's the obligatory ice stage of the game, but at least you can buy some boots to stop you from slipping. Another cool thing you can buy is up here. You can use this enemy's projectile to ascend to this normally unreachable platform and find a boomerang smith. If you talk to him with Mail and you have her boomerang weapon, he will power it up for a hefty fee. I believe this is the only place where you can get this. And nearby, using a similar trick, you can even get somewhere you were never intended to go. This stage exit. It's supposed to be a one-way entrance from the opposite direction, but if you go this way, you can skip one of the stages entirely. Continuing to progress the game this way can apparently have some weird effects though, making the game eventually unbeatable. The other ambiguous part of the game is here, where we find Blackie frozen in a block of ice. Our heroes only say that we need something to melt the ice. You have to go back to the very beginning of the volcanic zone, where a miner will give you some hot tea, but it isn't enough to melt all the ice. Getting some more hot tea proves to be a little more difficult. The miner says he doesn't have any more, but maybe one of the miners deeper in the mine does. If you take a wrong turn, you'll end up going through the whole stage again without finding anything. But if you go the right way, you'll eventually find a miner who has more tea. When we come back, it's kind of hilarious that he's fallen over after getting scared by a monster nearby. But anyway, now he's free, and as usual, he just runs away without even saying thanks. Next we'll find Material, who has managed to get out of his cage somehow, and with him is Nuts Cracker, who he reveals is a golem built by him. They trap our heroes in a block of ice, and when Blackie comes, he doesn't use as gentle a method to save us as we did for him. We'll fight some sisters named Rip and Rap, who each have one of the crystals we're looking for. One of them is on a pirate ship. This stage is quite a nice little diversion from the rest of the game, where we get to fight pirates, matey! The end boss of the iceberg turns out to be the Emperor who rules over the penguin people, and who is in league with the bad guys. He fights us in his true form, and afterward we get the third crystal. The penguins thank us for freeing them from the evil Emperor and give us all the best equipment in the game. And so our heroes head to the final overworld map, the castle where the demon god was sealed away. This area is filled with mazes and bosses everywhere. The bosses in Popful Mail, I think, were meant to be one of the highlights of the game, but most seem to agree that they're actually one of its worst aspects. There are very specific patterns the game wants you to learn, many of which are not obvious. They have razor-thin margins of error, requiring plenty of patience and dodging between tiny shots. Most of the later ones surpassed my tolerance limit, and I ended up using a healing item or two to beat them, which doesn't feel nearly as satisfying as actually mastering them. One of the bosses in the castle does have the fourth and final crystal, though. Near the end, we'll learn that Jakob has been making a body out of mithril for a great god who will do battle with the demon god. But when it's revealed that he was asked to make the body by Material, it comes to light that the mithril body was just for the demon god in the first place. Wow, how stupid. Now we finally get to fight Nutscracker in what might be the most well thought out and fun boss in a long time. Then we find Material, who has exhausted himself using his magic, preparing for the demon god's return. He says there's no stopping him now, even if we restore the seal. Blackie comes and starts kicking him while he's down, and Tato tells him to stop it. But I'm with Blackie on this one. He and Jakob haul him away. Are you sure you can trust those two to watch him? But for the very last stage, we have to solve 4 platforming puzzles in order to put the 4 crystals in their proper places. These puzzles are interesting, but feel a bit out of left field here at the very end of the game. Gao works best for these, as we gradually move the platforms by pushing them from the sides and bottom, in order to reach the goals. At the end of the final puzzle is the point of no return. Better save your game, cause when you place the crystal, you'll be taken to the final boss rush. Each of the 3 characters has to fight one boss, with no opportunity to save in between. Gao and Tato's are not hard, but it's Mail who has to fight the demon god, Geist Race. I like how she taunts him, saying they've beaten all his minions up until now, so he's probably not much of a big deal either. Geist Race says she'll regret saying that, and boy is he right. This end boss can only be described as a son of a bitch. At least a quarter of the time I spent playing this game was just retrying the end boss over and over again. It is also a little annoying that you have to beat the other two bosses and watch all the stuff in between before each attempt. This boss doesn't take away much HP, so you don't actually need that many healing items and elixirs to beat it. The only thing to worry about is instant death from the flames below, as the floor gradually breaks away each time you hit the boss, kind of like Dark Fact in Ys 1. I tried to be methodical, making the boss take out the floor from the outside first, but when I did finally win, it was actually when I stopped caring and just tried to get as many hits in as possible. I learned afterward that it's actually a little easier to just cheaply take him out using the dagger, but I never would have thought to do that. The dagger is even weaker than the powered up boomerang, which I did try a few times. The dagger actually wins out thanks to its speed. But however you manage to vanquish this end boss from hell, finally it's the ending. The music here was later made into the vocal song for the ending of the Sega CD and PC Engine versions. Material is brought before us in a cage, and Mail has to decide what to do with him. Since there's no more demon god to seal away, Blackie suggests maybe they could use the 4 crystals to imprison Material instead. But Mail seems to have a change of heart after having defeated Geist Race, and says, why not just let him go? How out of character for Mail. And when they let him out, he immediately says they'll regret it. There are tons of other demon gods he can revive, but Tato manages to calm his master down. Material says he's old and weak and just wanted to be remembered as a great wizard. He finally gives up and tells Mail about the treasures he's kept here in the castle, and says that she can take all she wants. So Mail gets her treasure, and we see our heroes visiting all the folks back in each of the stages, followed by the credits. The BGM here, I think, is only used for the credits in the PC-88 and PC-98 versions. It's a very cool Falcom piece that almost reminds me more of something from Brandish than Popful Mail. The credits list is incredibly short. By most accounts, Popful Mail was primarily the creation of a new face at Falcom at the time, Jun Nagashima, listed here for Program. He would go on to work on Ys 5 and Legend of Heroes 4 before leaving Falcom, and is still working in the game business today. The director is listed as Yoshio Kiya of the Dragon Slayer series, but apparently he barely even remembers directing this game. I got that fact from the book series The Untold History of Japanese Game Developers, which are 3 books you might want to check out if you're interested in this sort of thing. I'll leave a link in the description. Full disclosure, this isn't a paid promotion, but I did receive free copies of the books. For art and graphic, there are 2 more who were new to Falcom at the time. Yuichi Shiota would go on to work at Squaresoft after doing graphics for a few more Falcom games. The soundtrack to Popful Mail is so classic to me, I don't think I can even judge it fairly. Credits listed for the composition are Falcom Sound Team JDK, Miyako Ishikawa, and Atsushi Shirakawa. Shirakawa was another new face who would go on to compose for almost every Falcom game throughout the 90s and early 2000s, and played a large part in creating the 90s Falcom sound I love. Just like the 2 Dragon Slayer The Legend of Heroes games for PC-88, if you have a PC-8801 MC like this one with a CD drive, Popful Mail will allow you to use any CD for the BGM. In CD settings, you can select which track will correspond with each tune in the game. But if you want an actual CD arranged version of the game's soundtrack, unfortunately there aren't any particularly good options for Popful Mail. One thing you could use is Disc 3 from Falcom Special Box 94, which contains Popful Mail's super arranged version. But unfortunately, this disc has only 8 tracks from the game, plus a medley. A better option would be to use either the game disc from the PC Engine version of Popful Mail, or disc 2 from Popful Mail Soundbox 94, which contains the same PC Engine soundtrack. Either of these contains arrangements for almost every track from Popful Mail. The first port of Popful Mail was for the PC-88, which had firmly dethroned the PC-88 as the most popular PC line in Japan by this time. And while you might be expecting another quick port to the PC-98 as usual, instead Falcom spent 5 months improving the game. While the gameplay is the same, they upgraded the graphics to take advantage of the PC-98's resolution and color palette. Some of the cutscene graphics were even changed entirely. Considering this one and the naughty cover illustration, I'd say they had a pretty good idea what PC-98 fans like. She's supposed to be undergoing a medical examination, I guess. But one of the biggest improvements was the addition of hard drive support. The only thing about that is that it only works with DOS 3, making it kind of infamous in the PC-98 community for being difficult to get running from a hard drive nowadays. Here's the process for getting it to work on later versions of DOS. Unlike Legend of Heroes 3, where you need only the built-in DOS utility setver, here you need a freeware utility called vset, so it's a little more involved. All 3 console versions were developed simultaneously and took very different approaches. They ended up being released within just months of each other, but the Sega Mega CD version was the first one out the gate in Japan. This is also the only version that got a release in English, and has been talked about a lot on YouTube already, so I'll keep it short. This is the best version and probably the one to play if you're going to only play one. It was developed as a collaboration between Sega and Falcom. Though it keeps the story and overhead maps mostly intact, as you can see, it's an entirely reworked game with much larger characters and far better graphics and animation. Many of the stage layouts roughly follow those of the original, but it's fair enough to say they've been redesigned. Early on in development, there was a proposal to reskin this as a Sonic the Hedgehog game called Sister Sonic, where you would play as a female relative of Sonic's. But thanks to objections from fans who got word, that didn't end up happening. Though plans to still release it that way in North America apparently held out a little longer. I think it probably would have sold a little better that way in the US, but I'm grateful Working Designs ended up eventually bringing it over the way they did. As usual, they did make a few of the alterations they're infamous for, like increasing the challenge. Luckily, there's a patch nowadays to restore the original difficulty. Personally, I love this game so much, I eventually picked up a copy of the Japanese Mega CD version as well. Only 2 months later came the Super Famicom version, which was developed and released for the Super Famicom entirely by Falcom themselves. While often overshadowed by the Sega CD version, I think this one is totally worth a playthrough afterward. It's a completely reimagined, more compact Popful Mail. Instead of overworld maps, this one consists of a hub town and a stage select. Each of the zone maps of the original game have been replaced with a single long stage. So the game actually follows the same format as Ys 3. I've often jokingly referred to this one as Ys 3 2. While the graphics are not as nice as the Sega CD version, they're totally fine. Mail sure does blink a lot when she's walking. The story also has some small changes to suit the new format of the game, and there are a few new tunes added. And another 2 months after that came the final version of the game, for the PC Engine. This one was developed by Unix, a company that made a lot of my favorites on the PCFX. While it is cool that this is the only version with CD arranged music during the gameplay, the graphics are pretty underwhelming for the system. Just imagine a version of Popful Mail with graphics similar to the side-scrolling parts in Legend of Xanadu for an idea of what could have been done here. But this game makes more sense if you think of it as more of a direct port of the original PC-88 and PC-98 versions of the game, but with the challenge turned way down. Still, there is one major addition, in the form of 3 brand new overworld maps, where you have to play as a particular one of the 3 characters in each. And no, what you're watching isn't footage from those parts of the game. Sorry, I'm not going to play that far into the game again, just to capture footage.
That's all I can do without learning ancient Hebrew. Bart, I am not gonna learn ancient Hebrew.
The game has a completely different voice cast from the Mega CD version, and cutscenes which differ quite a bit from the other versions. These big characters on screen during some of the voice parts are also kinda cool. While it runs fine as a standard Super CD, there were some very minor disc caching improvements players could take advantage of if they had paid an arm and a leg for an arcade card. Obviously, this game wasn't one of the reasons to buy one. Overall, it's not a bad version of the game, but certainly not the first one you should play. Popful Mail, on any platform, is the kind of game that reminds me why I play video games in the first place. It's like they took everything great about action RPGs from this and previous eras and wrapped it all into one game. It's a celebration of gaming. Though I'm sure there are lots of people watching this thinking, okay, I played the Sega CD version and it was good, but not that great. And you'd be right. Playing through the PC-88 version served to remind me of some of the game's issues. The challenge of some of the bosses, especially the end boss, is really not that much fun, and I remember this being a bit of an issue even in the Sega CD version. Also, the game's story is a little weak. Since it's mostly copying tropes from other RPGs, nothing particularly compelling ever happens. Character motivations are a bit unclear. Mail should have bowed out at several points if she just wanted money, and her change of heart at the end doesn't feel logical or earned. Gao risks his life just to repay Mail and Tato for defeating the second world boss, and Material's obsession with reviving the demon god is never adequately explained. I kept waiting for the big reveal of his true motivations, but apparently there aren't any. He just didn't want to die a nobody. I guess it's supposed to be funny. But as a PC-88 game, the original Popful Mail is quite impressive. Falcom utilized all their knowledge of the PC-88 to make an enjoyable game that works within the system's limitations. I think I've said on occasion that Ys 3 might be my pick for best PC-88 game of all time, and Emerald Dragon is a pretty strong candidate as well. But Popful Mail might just deserve the crown now that I really think about it. According to an old version of Falcom's website, Popful Mail has gained new Falcom fans because of its original charm. It was their first game to embrace cuteness and show us Falcom's less daunting, more approachable side. It paved the way for future cute Falcom games like Zwei and Gurumin. The characters are cute and lovable, and the graphics and sound nostalgia-inducing. I can't not love Popful Mail. You might not want to play every version like I have, but I hope you all can enjoy the game in whatever form you choose. Sega CD, obviously. Bye. Thanks for watching this episode of PC-88 Paradise. This video was a request from my longtime patron, Gord Allott. He and all the others scrolling up the screen are doing a lot to keep me working on these videos, and it certainly wouldn't be possible without all of you watching either, so thanks. Hope to see you back again in the next one.